UCLA's interview process just got a whole lot tougher now that there's another open job in college football.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. We're talking about the recommitment of Matthew Muasau at the end. And hey, in the middle of the segment, we'll talk about Tim Skipper's opportunity to get first crack at the UCLA job after this most recent loss to Indiana. But we have to lead with this. LSU's firing of Brian Kelly has made this an absolute crazy coaching cycle. Crazy because UCLA is going to be fighting for openings with the rest of the country. Just to remind you, this episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, UCLA's first purchase, if you will, under Martin Jarmond, was to go after Deshaun Foster. And that was what I thought was maybe one of the more turbulent, crazier off seasons in coaching changes, coaching switches, more based off a Nick Saban retirement, and that just has a ripple effect. It just kind of goes all the way down and trickles and has a trickle-down effect to various schools. Now, when you have jobs open like LSU, you have jobs open like Penn State, then you're like, oh, wait, this is getting to be a crowded list. Oklahoma State was expected to be the pride of the Big 12, and they're not even in the top 5 of best jobs open. You have Florida open. Arkansas, you mix in there. Virginia Tech and UCLA axing their coach on the same day. And then you still got Stanford, who's looking for a full-time opening. And when these guys eventually hire coaches, probably other big-name coaches from other schools, that means, say, hey, maybe Lane Kiffin gets poached by Florida. That's going to leave the Ole Miss job open if that happens. So it's a crowded market where, okay, UCLA has somewhat of an advantage, but in terms of in-season firings, it does not jog my memory far near past. I don't know that you've seen this many in-season coaching openings, all right? Because UCLA, they were the first to jump off the Deshaun Foster bandwagon. But now other teams are paying multiple millions of dollars, like $50 million in excess to get rid of a Brian Kelly. Just a little shy of that, I believe, with James Franklin. Other coaches have had bigger paydays to not coach while they're getting fired still with a little less than half the season to go. The one thing UCLA has going for them, beyond the location, beyond just the branding that is UCLA, the Los Angeles branding, the traditional atmosphere that Westwood brings playing in the Rose Bowl, is that as much as Deshaun Foster must have been a little overpaid for sure, they're not paying a buyout like what LSU is paying for Brian Kelly. Now, I'm pretty sure the resources at LSU are a lot better than UCLA. The Bruins are improving that. The UC Regents are good. But the Bruins don't have to go out and worry like they truly overpaid a guy or are cutting bait way too early. Deshaun Foster should have never been hired in the first place. And there were some things that seemingly were going right. But in terms of the product on the field, the attitude in the locker room, it was just sour right away in early parts of year 2. And then UCLA cut bait. But they're not owing Deshaun so much money that it's $50 million. Now it's a lot more than they should have paid him in the first place. Let's be honest. Okay. And the UC Regents had already just, I guess a few weeks ago now, approved that UCLA can pay a bit more for their coach. Don't know the exact number of that. It's not been disclosed, but they have an opportunity. And I remember I came on a few weeks ago and had an episode detailing this very topic. UCLA has to take their time. They have to take their time in hiring this coach, not rush. Well, that was before Florida finally got rid of Billy Napier, even though it seemed like he could have saved his job with a win over Texas. Then LSU, out of nowhere, cuts bait after a dominant loss at the hands of Texas A&M in a night game in Death Valley. Mind you, that game, their season, started with a win at Clemson. And you're like, oh, these programs. Mike Norvell at Florida State might get fired. Their season started with a home win against Alabama. All right? So that could be another job if Florida State continues to struggle down the stretch, that you're like, that could be another top-tier job. Now the Bruins are stuck, this coaching committee, with Martin Jarmond, where you hope he makes the right decision or is given no power at all, the UCLA AD in this hiring process, that they have to make the right decision with a lot of other competing factors. And I know I had an episode fairly recently about ESPN ranking UCLA as one of the worst jobs open at the Power 4 level. And now there's even another job open that would rank higher than UCLA, which, to be honest, LSU is probably on the higher priority list to the James Franklins of the world. To, if Lane Kiffin wanted to bounce somewhere, Florida, LSU would be one of those options. If you wanted to leave an Ole Miss for some reason, then yes, that could make a lot of sense. Without throwing shade on the UCLA brand, I think that's just where people, if they want to stay in the South, have endless amounts of money, go live that SEC lifestyle, cool. But if you have the personality and the fit to UCLA, the Bruins have been a sleeping giant that have been dormant for just way too long. The Bruins had almost thoughts of eruption, of peaking with Chip Kelly. There's hope, and then, it died right away, even though there are a couple of decent to good seasons. There was some maybe building success in the recruiting game for Deshaun Foster. Just didn't make it anywhere worthwhile for him to stay at UCLA long enough to see it through because the team was so bad on the field. We've seen Tim Skipper turn this team on and turn it over overnight in much better effort and discipline and better play from what UCLA was, which was an embarrassing product, embarrassing team this early in the 2025 season. So the Bruins have been a sleeping, dormant giant. They're a dormant volcano waiting to explode. All right. UCLA is of the Indiana variety with so much better tradition. I think so many better resources than Indiana had before Curt Cignetti got there. All right. Mind you, Indiana had Michael Penix Jr., and they couldn't win with him with half of college football not playing in 2020. Think about that. That's the last time Indiana was good prior to Curt Cignetti because they had a Heisman Trophy, finalist taking his team to the national championship game and all that, right? Like a guy who is now in the NFL and became a starter and supplanted Kirk Cousins in year one. I haven't paid attention as much to his year two, but that's how bad Indiana was. They had a guy in Michael Penix Jr. who took Washington to the playoff, the CFP final, and Indiana was all right. And then Curt Cignetti, with an attitude change, many different players, is now one of the highest paid coaches in college football. That's the attitude UCLA needs to go and find their next coach while they're trying to navigate what's going on. Because while you look at odds and you might see Jedd Fisch is one of the top guys to come to UCLA. Well, we talked to Roman Thomas Schaaf of Locked On Huskies. He's building something. Well, if you want Jedd Fisch, you would want the quarterback Damon Williams Jr. to come with them because there's not necessarily a guarantee that Nico will stay for his redshirt junior year, depending on what his options are. The portal, NIL-wise, NFL-wise, there's a lot of things at play here. So if you got Jedd Fisch, you might get a quarterback for a year to 2 years. Or you go elsewhere and you want a program builder that comes out of nowhere like a Dan Lanning and has put Oregon on the map with his personality, his fire, his tenaciousness that put the Oregon Ducks in top 10 territory in 3 years running, now 4 years running, right? Where they just fell short of Washington a few years ago, just fell short of Washington in the Pac-12 final year, had his team number one. And I'm not saying Dan Lanning's the guy, but you need that type of guy that can put you on the map in the blink of an eye with just sheer will, sheer firepower in recruiting and understanding of what this new day and age means. So maybe you go somebody younger and not old school, like a Brian Kelly, who could obviously get thrown into the fire of UCLA, bring him. Coach O, I've heard Mark Colkin say, bring in Coach Orgeron, those types of guys. You need a younger guy with the fire and passion who isn't stuck to the traditional values of what college football used to be, like you'll see Nick Saban say on College Football Game Day every Saturday, where a lot of what he says makes sense, but it's not going to win and turn around the UCLA branding, the UCLA football program in an instant. That's not what you need. But the Bruins have to be not frugal, but they have to be very smart with what they want to do in their next head coaching hire. Because it is now getting crowded, and it's only going to get worse. We are not even in the crunch time to conference championship season. We're on the verge of the final month. We're not even there yet. And the amount of open jobs, absolutely insane. There's still 1 to 2 upsets or devastating losses from having the Power 4 list be close to 10 plus, and the amount of money owed to fired coaches might even surpass 200 million. I don't even know the numbers, 300 million if it gets stacked up with a lot of contracts being ripped up. That's where we're at in college football. UCLA was the first to get rid of their coach, or one of the first. And then next thing you know, you're like, man, this is absolute insanity with what's going on in college football right now. It's getting crowded. I'm a little claustrophobic right now with this coaching vacancy. The Bruins now have to find a way to be one of the quicker ones to make decisions so you can get a quicker view on high school recruiting and who's the best players available, potentially in the portal when it opens in January. You got to get the right guy in place quicker than what I even imagined a month ago. That's not even in play anymore because how many jobs are open? Close to 8 Power 4 jobs, over 10 jobs at the FBS level. Who's the top guy? It looks like Jedd Fisch, according to betting odds. If you're looking around various sites, if you're looking at various numbers, you're like, oh, UCLA might have Jedd Fisch linked. Talked about it. Not sure if it's likely, but that's pretty nuts of what's going on. Next, let's talk about Tim Skipper's candidacy, because it's getting first crack, just like Jedd Fisch did in 2017. Are the Bruins going to regret it, or are they going to make the same decision that Penn State did? Let's talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited because there's the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, and there's just nothing like it. Because let's be real, actually getting those tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. The endless queues, the hidden fees, the prices that jump at checkout. That's why I use GameTime. It gives the advantage back to you, back to me, the fan. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. No surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And think about it. College football is winding down. The best times to go see these games before it's ice cold at the eventual playoff. You want to go get these tailgating moments in the perfect picturesque moments of the fall. So go to GameTime, get those views of the seats. You're like, man, got big rivalry matchups going on. Where do you want to go sit in the Rose Bowl? Or where do you want to go sit at other college football games? You can see your view from your seats, so you take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's a promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. Alrighty, let's talk about Tim Skipper's candidacy for UCLA. I've touched on it a little bit in the recent episodes I've posted, but UCLA, they're stuck in a unique situation. They had Tim Skipper kind of penciled in as, this could be our leading guy here at the end of 2025 to take the job. He's brought in some recruits. He's gotten some flips, some recommitments, which I'll touch on in the final segment of the show. And then there's the wins, beating Penn State, leading to James Franklin getting fired, beating and dominating Jonathan Smith, kind of taking him out of the running for the UCLA job and making him an unattractive option, at least to me as an observer of, I don't want that guy if Tim Skipper just went to East Lansing and kicked the Spartans' butt with Aiden Childs. No, I don't want that. And then you go beat Maryland's with a coach who he thought he was on the chopping block with Mike Locksley, and the Bruins went at home. Now a 50-point beatdown sandwiched with a post-bye loss to Northwestern has left us with sour tastes in our mouth. Now we'll forever be thankful, because it definitely felt for a while there like UCLA, before they got some momentum, was heading to 0-12. Let's be real. After the Northwestern game, thinking they could be as a 25, 26-point underdog to Penn State at home when their quarterback was healthy, when their entire system was in place, to think UCLA could win that game when Penn State was on the verge of beating Oregon at home in the whiteout? No. So you have to give them kudos to that, to helping keep recruiting just semi-afloat in this day and age with the staff that's still in place, while motivating these guys, hopefully improving their lives as a UCLA football player, as a student athlete, and also improving them as young men off the field, which is still an important task that these coaches have to deal with. The relentless sense of optimism that he brings with Jerry Neuheisel as an attractive package, right? You bring in the young, forever Bruin. You bring in Tim Skipper's good vibes, Kevin Coyle, who I think isn't to blame for a 50-point loss to Indiana when UCLA got out-muscled and got literally punched in the mouth again and again by the Hoosiers. The Bruins gave Indiana short fields. And it's not like the Bruins couldn't game plan. It was just Indiana going down the field and making plays and saying, you can't stop us, which is what that entire Indiana game was. So how much do you blame Tim Skipper for Chip Kelly's shortcomings, for Deshaun Foster's inability to put together a quality roster in 2025, where maybe after all that NFL talent left in 24, and then some of the better receivers and some of the better players, you see TJ Harden, who has been making plays at SMU. You've seen some of those receivers like a J. Michael Sturdivant, Logan Loya, who are key pass catchers and key players in the passing game in 24 and in previous years, deciding to bolt for the portal. You're like, this team seemed destined for a downtick, despite the incoming talent that Nico brought and some of the discounts with the guys that came with him in the portal. UCLA still hasn't built an O-line or a true D-line, which is amazing how UCLA, with Jerry Neuheisel, was able to get a running game going. Kevin Coyle get some semblance of a pass rush, overhaul the entire offense, overhaul the entire defense, and showcase some creativity in special teams going for it on fourth down. Various looks on fake punts. But now that everybody's expecting a fake punt, and when Tim Skipper, fourth and long, and I think a poorly timed, poorly designed special teams call against a coach like Curt Cignetti, set Indiana up 1st and 10 near midfield. Didn't lead to any points because the defense made a play, but people are expecting it now. Onsides. It's fun to do it when nobody expects it and execute, but how can you do that as a program building head coach from 2026 to 2027? What are those reasons that Fresno State couldn't come in and didn't want to make you the guy? And even though Fresno State's having a pretty solid year, he coached the Bulldogs in 2 bowl games because Tedford was out due to health reasons prior to 24, and he took the entire 24 season on as an interim head coach. He didn't get the job after what was a pretty decent year. If Fresno State had beat UCLA, I think maybe that might have changed things, but he didn't get the job. And then 2 months on the job at UCLA turns into the interim guy and one of the biggest stories for a week or so in college football. I think he is in the top 5. Automatically, he gets put in the top 5. UCLA, I think, at the minimum, for him to make it to the final interviews, should get 5 wins. They have to get 5 wins and be competitive. 5 wins with a win at SC. That's what you need. You can go win at SC, keep this every other year tradition of at least winning the Coliseum before we turn in to another win streak against the Trojans. Beat them in the Coliseum, and get to at least 5 wins and showcase and say, hey, we should have more wins, but we choked it early to UNLV and to New Mexico when we hadn't figured it out. I think you could chalk it up to, okay, reasonable. It's beyond reasonable doubt that he should be within the final guys considered. Now, if you don't get to the 5 wins, if UCLA struggles against Nebraska, struggles against Washington, has just as bad of a game against Ohio State on the road like they did in Bloomington, and you don't go beat SC, then, and that's probably a very overrated SC team, right? You look at Lincoln Riley, it's, they beat Michigan at home. Well, everybody from the Midwest has come west and lost, or in Penn State's case, come from the east side of the United States to the West Coast and taken a big fat L, only to dump the contract to their head coach and just completely get beaten down the next couple of weeks, Northwestern and then Iowa. What UCLA needs is the definitive run. And hopefully Indiana is not the definitive blow to Tim Skipper's case, but all this talk about how he is absolutely the guy. He is absolutely one of the 5 guys that should be on the list. UCLA should be smart enough. Bob Myers, their entire coaching committee, the search coaching committee, needs to come together and realize he has to be on this list. But he can no longer, after that Indiana game, be the close-up guy that they're only looking at. You have to think out of the box. You have to negotiate. You have to be smart enough to know, is Jedd Fisch just using UCLA to get more money and more contract leverage and more security in Seattle? All right. Is he going to do that to be more secure with the Huskies, earn more money, and just do that. Or some other coach. You need a young up-and-comer as a head coach, need an established coordinator. I think you need to throw a Bruin in there. Obviously, everybody's a little bitter about recent Bruins, but you got to throw a Bruin in there. You have to throw in a head coach from the FCS level, and you bring in Tim Skipper, all right? So you need somebody established head coach if you want to go big, young and up-and-comer for both head coach and coordinator, a Bruin, and then Tim Skipper. Those are the 5 possible options between a Skipper and the types of guys UCLA should look at with the right mindset instead of like, oh, let's go throw a lot of money at Brian Kelly and hope it's going to stick at UCLA. No. Let's be smarter than that. Let's not be like the NHL and just get a bunch of retreads and keep bouncing from coach to coach, which is kind of what college football is doing. This guy, that guy. The programs that have done well have taken their chances. Indiana on Kurt Cignetti. Oregon, from kind of a weird malaise, they went after, Dan Lanning. And despite an early dominating loss to Georgia, they've been a pretty respectable program leading to the number 1 seed, the most recent CFP. Where can the Bruins go? Is it rating one of the coordinators at Oregon? Is it looking at a gregarious guy like a New Mexico Jason Eck? All right, not saying that it's him specifically, but those types of guys that can relate to the fans, relate to the building of a program, and are just guys waiting for their opportunity. Or is it Jed Fish, who isn't the best at being in Seattle? Obviously, I've talked with, Roman, and his wife and his family is not in Seattle with him. Would that be better in Los Angeles? Is that even a consideration if you're going to bring Jed Fish to SoCal, where he wanted to be at UCLA so bad? He beat him down at Arizona multiple times. All things to think at. And maybe if you want to swing big at James Franklin, don't do it for the financial reasons, for the influx of potential eyeballs for a minute. No, do it for the right reasons. We were already in the national spotlight in April in the first few weeks of the season when UCLA was losing with Nico. Let's make the right decision and right the wrongs of the winter 2024 when the Bruins just flat out refused to fire Chip Kelly for interviewing for all those other jobs. All right. Next, let's talk about actual commitment, what that looks like from players who are starting to still see what's being built at UCLA despite the instability at the top of the head coaching position. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. The NBA is back, and there's no better place than to get in on the action with FanDuel because that is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And if you even missed the start of the game and you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to the fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps the game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And here's something with FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So check out FanDuel.com. Check out the lines even for this UCLA upcoming game in Nebraska in a couple weeks. Stay tuned with FanDuel and think, hey, is this UCLA revolution going to keep going? Go to FanDuel.com to sign up and play with your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, wrapping things up here with UCLA, Locked On UCLA today. We're talking about the latest recommit flip that the Bruins have been able to get in the recruiting trail for the class of 2026 guys. Matthew Muasau, younger brother of Darius Muasau. For Matthew Muasau hails from St. John Bosco. So for the third time in a week, the Bruins are able to pick up a new commitment for a class that was once top 20, faded into the 80s, and now is hovering in the upper 70s, according to 24/7 Sports, might even find its way into the 50s, or maybe with a late push, a lot of late flips, maybe some guys coming back to UCLA could get themselves in the top 30, which would be a miraculous up and down roller coaster ride that we would have never expected with the instability at the moment with no head coach. And now that the list of jobs are opening up, here's the benefit for UCLA. If the Bruins go get somebody and get somebody big time or just somebody respectable who knows how to recruit with this staff, then they can go recoup some of the talent that was lost if they still want to focus on those guys. So Muasau comes in a 3-star linebacker, 6'1", I believe, seeing from Eric Sondheimer, one of the legendary LA Times Preps reporters, about he's doing good right now on a stacked St. John Bosco defense, a team that is always one of the tops in the country, tops in the state of California, which generally means tops in the country, one of the better players in Southern California, which always means one of the more developed players in Southern California and across the country. So you're bringing Matthew Muasau, you have CJ Lavender, and Travis Robertson. So you get some help in the linebacker room. You add with Lavender in the secondary. So that's two SoCal guys from the Trinity League, one of the most competitive leagues, not just in the greater SoCal area, not just in the state of California or the West Coast, the Western region, and all of the entire country in high school football. And you're going after those guys? Yeah, that's big time. And you're bringing in a Travis Robertson, a 6'6", sometimes listed as 6'7" offensive tackle, flipping Lavender from Washington, Jed Fish being potentially linked again with UCLA. Are there rumors that that's happening and that there's some sway one way or another? I don't know. That's not the connection I'm going to make. But the fact that UCLA was not only able to secure 1 to 2 flips, 3, get a recommitment, and it was Matthew Muasau who was one of those initial guys that was kind of a part of that initial wave in the summer or early on in this 2025 recruiting class into 2026, that you're like, wait a minute, this is the guy that we want, and it kind of built and built and built, bringing that UCLA family back in it with Darius, who finished his college career at UCLA. You start getting the other guys to realize, wait, I was once committed. This guy committed again. What's going on with UCLA that I should reconsider my decommitment? Not often you see a flip, decommitment, recommitment, but for Matthew Muasau, that is the possibility at the moment. 3 flips in a week, obviously all before a UCLA loss, although these recruits have seen, if they want to see ugly film, they can go watch the first few weeks on tape. If they want to see what a top-tier football program looks like, and it's Indiana. And if you want to be a guy who's either from Southern California or sees the opportunity afforded to them by potentially going to UCLA, and you see how quick that turnaround was at Indiana in 1 to 2 years, then UCLA is one of the places you want to go. If you want to develop, get a great education, and play in one of the most iconic stadiums of all time, then that's the place, because the fan base is waiting for a winner, waiting for some success. And I think these kids that are being recruited, that are looking at what's going on with UCLA, are like, wait a minute, I like what's going on. Now, I wonder what's going to happen if Tim Skipper is not the guy. I wonder if that's going to maintain these relationships, or if it's the GM, if it's the recruiting staff that stays in place and says, hey, we had momentum. We just need the guys who can get the X's and O's to stay in place for longer than 15 games, and we can finally get some talented kids in here. Because UCLA was not hurting in the recruiting department before this high school class just crumbled. They weren't. Now they can start to rebuild it, and it's actually not looking like it's too far of a climb for them to fix it if they make the timely hire, the right guy who pushes forward in this upcoming class. It's still fixable, which is why we got an 8-clap going. We'll talk more UCLA basketball, football, everything on future Locked On UCLA episodes. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8-clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.